Welcome to QWERTY Writing Life podcast, where we have candid chats about our creative lives. This is May.
And I'm Joy.
For more information about our podcast, monthly newsletter, or author resource series, visit us at QWERTYWritingLife.com. That's QWERTY, spelled QWERTY.
It's the first 6 letters on your keyboard.
So, are you ready? Grab your tea.
Or your coffee, and let's chat.
Hello, everyone. It's another week.
Hello and welcome.
Today, Joy and I are going to talk about redefining self-care. But before we do that, let's talk about our creative weeks. Joy, what did you do?
Well, I have had some incredible opportunities the past few weeks to just really get a lot of creative community around me, which of course, we love. So I was able to go to a couple of book signings for some local authors and got to hang out with them and just watch them take the stage, and it was so much fun to see them interacting with readers. We went to the Louisiana Book Festival, and a certain someone met me there, which was very special. May, thank you so much for coming. It was so much fun.
It was a joy. It was so good to see you in your element, and then to just get refreshed, I guess, in the literary community. To see so many people who are excited about books and words and things was so nice.
I know. It was so neat to see so many different people from all over who came together just to literally to celebrate the written word. You had kids there who were eating up the children's authors and all of their fun story times and the crafts and the activities. And then you had a whole teen section. And then, of course, you had all the adults. It was great to see so many generations of readers together in one place celebrating. So I feel like that, like you said, it was refreshing. I think it was a good refilling of the creative well. So... yay.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I agree. I don't know if I said aggrieve or not, but I meant agree.
Aggrieve. I really like that. Is that a word? I want that to be a word. Can it be a word?
I think we can. It's a QWERTY word now.
Yes,
let's do it.
Okay.
We are aggrieved that there is not an agree.
Oh, that's perfect. Yay.
And there very well might be. We should probably look that up. But as for now, it's a QWERTY word. I do kind of feel as if we were kind of witnessing a little bit of history as well, because we're seeing how publications and actually just the publishing world and literary world is shifting in a way. So Joy is an indie author, right? And this is normally a very traditionally published world of the Louisiana Book Festival. And Joy was able to be on a panel. She had a book signing. She was a part of all of the nuts and bolts of the Louisiana Book Festival. And so she's kind of pioneering a way for indie authors to be more established in Louisiana, to be recognized as and respected as they should be. And this is just a beautiful thing to witness as an indie author as well. So,
and it was exciting. I know, it was exciting too. Since then, I've gone back and I've looked at all the authors, and there are several who are indies who were on panels. Yes. So I was able to, in my emails to some of the directors and such of the festival, I was able to just point that out and thank them. Thank them for pioneering, thank them for opening the door and being really incredible pioneering gatekeepers in the community, I feel like. So that was pretty exciting.
Yeah, that is so, so great. I love it. Can you recall if there has been an indie author that has been a part of panels or, book signings or anything like that organized by the Louisiana Book Festival before? Or is this the first year?
I'm not sure. So I missed a few of the festivals. 2020, of course, they didn't have it. And then 2021 and 2022, I had other obligations that particular weekend of the festival, and so I didn't get to make it. Before that, I don't remember any, but that doesn't mean that there weren't any. But that is something that I'm curious about, and I would love to know, when, because I remember looking on the website, and this has not been that long ago. I know in 2019 when I was there as an exhibitor, I know that it was on there, and basically they had a line, self-publishers don't need to submit
for panels, or
right, for panels. So I know that it was like that then, and I don't know when exactly they took that away, but I sure am thankful they did.
Right. And just a huge thank you for Louisiana and the literary community in Louisiana for recognizing that there is value and literary worth in indie publishing and indie authors. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. And so, May, tell us about your creative week.
Yes, absolutely. So I met with a friend, a creative friend, which I don't get a lot of time to do that kind of stuff. So it was very awesome to be able to sit down, and we put on the calendar a lunch a month. So hopefully we'll be able to continue and get together at least for an hour and just kind of revel in the friendship, and also just not get too bogged down by everything else, to remember that we are creatives, and that also gives us life. So I did that, and we got to talking about story and working through an idea as far as how to represent story in a different way, like a nonfiction kind of a thing, and if we can resonate in a teaching pattern for something. So that was really exciting too, to kind of see, not only to reacquaint ourselves with our creative selves, but in our author selves. But we're both teachers too, so in our souls. So it's just it was a really great day. So there's that. And of course I went to the Louisiana Book Festival, which is huge, and just got to be immersed and surrounded with people who are like me and who are excited about the things that I'm excited about. And there is something so beautiful about just experiencing the energy around you, being a part of all of that. It's kind of like going to a concert, or what's something else, like to church or something, where you're just around people who are just loving the same things. You have a commonality, even though they're all strangers, and you feel like you could just kind of start a conversation about that thing, and then they would fall into it as well, because you already know, you already have that in way to just share your excitement, and they could share theirs. It's a beautiful thing, and I sometimes forget that. So I'm glad I had a reason to go.
Oh, I'm so glad that you came. It made my day, that's for sure.
Oh man, it was so great. And it was an early morning, so I went ahead and drove down the night before, and I had a hotel room, and I had that time to myself as well, and that doesn't happen very often. And so and it was so funny because you wanted to go to an after hours thing at this place in Baton Rouge, and I'd gotten in, and I'd gotten to the hotel, and I was like, I am so tired. And I turned up all of my volume and everything, and I was like, when Joy messages me, because you were like, I will let you know when we leave so that you can meet us there, because it was just a hop, skip, and a jump from a hotel. And so I was like, I'll turn on all of the sounds really, really loud on my phone, so when you message me, I will be woken up, because I needed some sleep.
Oh.
And so I did that, and I completely fell asleep. And then I woke up at 11 o'clock, and I was like, I didn't hear anything.
Oh.
And so I was like, oh no. And so I looked, and you had sent me a message at 9:15, and you were like, I'm tired, I'm not going. And I was like, yes. So that kind of happened. It was pretty funny. And the night before, I'd gotten maybe 2 or 3 hours of sleep or something. And so I was just exhausted, and it did not hurt my feelings that you did not go to the after party. So and that also gave me perfect opportunity to get the rest that I needed in order to have a very enjoyable day and drive home. So I got home, I guess, about 9:15, 9:30, something like that. And it was great. It was wonderful.
Well, and see, you needed the rest, and having that time alone in a hotel room is something that we're going to talk about today. That's a good
Right.
example of this whole self-care thing that we're
Right.
redefining.
It's true. It's absolutely true because it's funny that this is the topic for today too, and all of this stuff happened. But there was a moment where I was like, man, like I literally did nothing but get under those covers in the hotel room and like get up and leave again. And I thought, wow, that was kind of like a waste of the hotel cost, right? I should have just gotten up early and then just driven and all that kind of stuff. But then I was like, no, absolutely not. It was totally worth it because I needed that rest. I needed to be able to have the time in the morning and, like in that space. If I would have gotten up at like 4 o'clock in the morning and after having just a couple of hours sleep the night, a couple of nights before, and then driven down and, gotten to where we needed to go, had a completely full day, had dinner, and then drove back at night. It was dark. There's a very good chance that I could have hurt myself, or my vehicle or somebody else who was on the road. So I switched the way that I was looking at that and thinking about that. And I felt better.
That's good.
But yeah, that's what we're talking about. And so, like, Joy and I were thinking maybe this whole self-care thing, there's something to it that we're not understanding or really acknowledging. And so today, you guys are going to be joining us for a super candid chat about redefining self-care. And technically, this is an ongoing conversation between Joy and I. And we began this a couple of months ago. And to give you a peek ahead at where our thoughts are leading us, so we're going to go way beyond the bubble baths and the candles, and often that's the kind of stuff that we often think about when we talk about the concept of self-care, is like going to the nail place or I don't know, things like that.
Yeah, and I think especially for women. So the first question that we considered was, is a spa day even self-care? Not everyone is able to go on a retreat or have a bathtub where they can use in candlelight.
I don't have a good bathtub. That's very sad to me.
I mean, yeah, and I'm just not a bath person necessarily. So, that's just not our jive. So, even if you could though, our question first was, do these actions equal self-care if it doesn't have the result desired?
Right. And so that led us to this other very, very important question, which is, what is the definition of self-care? Like, what is the purpose of self-care, and what can fall into those guidelines? So over the months, we have evaluated experiences and our expectations and our stereotypes of the topic and thought now is probably the best time to catch you guys up on this conversation and all the things that we're thinking about.
Yeah. So in true QWERTY fashion, we made up a definition that we're going to use as a foundation for the rest of the chat. Also, just to note, our definition includes the purpose. And I feel like this was super key in our conversations as we were working all of this out.
Right. So the definition that we have for self-care, so that you guys can be on the same page as Joy and I, is this. Self-care is how we care for ourselves physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, all the ways that can make us human beings, right? So how we care for ourselves in those ways that enable us to pour into the people in our lives and into the responsibilities and opportunities that we've accepted without, and here's the key, without sacrificing personal peace and our own wholeness.
Yeah. And we'll include that in the show notes. So you guys will have that in front of you. You can look at a little bit more. But once we had our definition of purpose written out, we wondered if they were stagnant or fluid. And after further discussion, we feel confident saying that the definition and purpose are stagnant in nature, but can be individualized and kind of be fluid in identification and implementation.
Yes. And, in case you guys are wondering, like Joy and I did not really have a plan. We didn't plan this conversation out or show up to this whole thing with like our notepads and our pens and our glasses and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. We're presenting it to you in a very organized fashion that was very well thought out. But when we were just talking about this, it was very organic. And we created the definition of self-care together whenever we were finding a disjointedness in the conversation. And we were trying to figure out where we both stood on things and what we considered self-care and that sort of thing. And we realized that we weren't able to have the best conversation possible without defining self-care. So that's why we do these kind of things. And so we were just chatting and sharing with each other as other creative confidants do. And streamlining of this is for you guys to know where we are and to join in the conversation. And that's the important thing.
Yeah. And here's a funny tale to add to that. We had planned this episode and began fleshing it out before our incredible interview with Dan Blank. Be sure to check out that episode in case you missed it. That was our last episode. We'll link to that below. But here is the really cool thing. He actually mentioned self-care. He talked about how even on his unusually busy day when we recorded our chat. Okay, so that particular day, his wife was ill, and so in addition to his work responsibilities and regular responsibilities around the house, he was kind of picking up some slack too and caring for her as well. So anyway, even though that was what was going on in his day, he prioritized his walk. That's one of the things that he specifically mentioned. He went on his regular walk and he felt great about it because he knows that if he's not active and cared for, he won't be able to care for his family or give his best at work. And so he gave us really, I feel like, a fantastic setup for where we're going today. So on that note, we're going to walk you through some of our thoughts on this topic of redefining self-care.
Yes. And the first thing that I really think we need to note is in this redefinition, we need to note that self-care is not a straight line. It's kind of wobbly.
Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, for those of you Doctor Who fans out there.
Yeah, and so if you're anything like me, the idea of something that is already like laid out in a straight path with like your stops already prepared for you, all of those kind of things, that is the ideal. I feel as if I could ever get to that place where there is a straight line and there are all of these stops and I know what to anticipate, etc., that I will have made it. I will be an adult. But
I fear that it's elusive.
We're getting there. So here I am for decades into this thing called life, and I have been striving for that particular thing, a nice straight line, a predictable path, and I have found over the last 4 decades that is not that is not attainable. And the more that I try for it, the longer that I make that the benchmark of success, that it's never going to be something that I can reach, right? So though I strive for a straight line, I do recognize that the beauty comes with the winding path and the view that's there and the impromptu situations that arise and the beautiful people that I meet along the way. And so I am personally redefining self-care in that I am trying to let go of that ideal that the straight line is the goal.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. And it's so hard to do, I think, definitely. So, another thing too, as we were having all of these conversations and everything, often it would come back to, okay, but we have to do this and this and this and this. We have to do all these things. We have all these responsibilities, right? But that led us in our conversation to say, we weren't created to push ourselves to breaking points. And I think sometimes, well, not just sometimes, and I don't just think, like, this is legit, we really do this. We push ourselves to these breaking points. And I think that might be why self-care is such a big deal right now in our culture, and it's because we all do this. We push ourselves so hard and we need something. So a couple of the things that May and I really talked about, both of us are Christians, and so when we think through these kinds of topics, we do so from our Christian worldview. So first of all, we realized sin messed up the world around us and our bodies. It affected our minds, affected our bodies, and because of that, we have limitations on both minds and bodies now, really because of sin entering the world. The other thing that we realized was rest was actually in the garden before sin. Okay?
Everyone was perfect.
Yes, when everything was perfect. God created the world and then he rested. He instituted this idea of rest, right? It's not an evil thing. It's not a cop-out. It's not a limitation, any of those things. So for May and I, we really had to adjust our thinking about what we're able to do and why we have these limits, and then also recognize and embrace the fact that rest really is an okay thing.
Right. And to add to that, there was something just to talk about, like the stereotype, or not even the stereotype, but like our culture's definition of good work. Can we talk about that for a second? I can't remember where I heard this, but I don't think that I came up with it by myself, but it did affect me in a way that felt very personal. When we stay up, when we stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning, watching a movie or going to a concert or reading a book or something like that, that's disparaged, right? Like, it's like, well, that's your fault, right? Like, that's why you're tired. It's your fault. You should have managed your time better, right? But if we stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning working on a project, a work project, or finishing up something, checking emails, doing things that are connected to the hustle, then that is considered good work. That's, you're tired, but look at all the things that you did. That is wrong. Like, that's something that we've got to, or I know I've got to work on, because that's generally the times that I'm spending. I'm congratulating myself for getting through with things by working extra, by sacrificing rest, by sacrificing self-peace, etc., etc. So that's a cultural thing that we're going to have to shift out of in order to figure out what self-care is to you, what self-care is to me, and what the ideal life could look like, and what the ideal life could be. So, and also just to reflect back on the straight line thing, I think I got a little off topic there. The straight line was not necessarily about adulting. It was meant to be like, self-care is not a straight line. Like, if you like, all of the things that we identify as self-care things as a society does not necessarily mean that that's going to be the right thing for me to do in order to find this wholeness and peace within myself. So if the bath is self-care to you, and you find wholeness and peace in that, then yes, straight line, go. If that's not an option, or self-care can just look so differently and be in so many different directions. It might not be just a path.
Yeah, and it definitely flows right into the adulting thing, though. It's all interconnected. I
Right.
think what you said was 100% spot on. I think also and I know some people don't like the whole terminology of seasons, which I like that. It makes sense to me, but whatever. There are different times of your life where this self-care is going to look different, and so in that way as well, it's not necessarily a straight line. Like, it's not always going to be the same thing. It's not always going to look the same. So yeah, I think there are multiple ways that we can take that and run with it, for sure.
Yeah. And you might have a different perspective on, self-care not being a straight line. We'd love to hear that too.
Yeah, and that's really, this whole concept of redefining self-care. We're sharing with you like how we personally are redefining this, but this is going to look different for you. This is just a starting point for a larger conversation and for you to be thinking through things. So keep that in mind as we're going through our thoughts on the process.
Right. And if you were wondering how this is relating to creativity and our creative lives, I can personally vouch that being in a place where I have not considered myself well cared for by myself, it is definitely something that brings on emotions that are negative, like shame and guilt and things like that, that directly affect my creative output and in my creative journey. So if you're wondering how that goes, like this is kind of it's a wellness kind of a thing, but it's also a creative wellness, a mental wellness as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So, okay, so I got us a little off topic and I'm very sorry about that, but let's go back to rest, okay? So Joy and I were wondering, like, what is the proper place for rest in our fast-paced culture and in our culture of production and desire to leave pieces of ourselves behind when we are gone? And that's that whole, like, legacy thing. So let's talk about, like, what the fast-paced culture is. One of those things is the fast-paced mind. And so I suffer from this. Everything feels important all at once. And so there's generally about 80 things that are happening in my mind all at once. And I don't know necessarily which one is the most important one to work on first. So I just kind of grab one and go. Which is probably not the best way to handle that, but we're working on things.
I know. Well, and it is so hard, to when you have so many things going on. Oh, yes. Anyway, sorry, preach.
No, you're so fine.
I'm feeling that so much right now.
I know, and we have so many areas that are in our lives that we want to touch and hold and love on and affect. We want to affect things, isn't that right? Like I feel that today. I want to affect things in a positive way, and I want to do good things. But like there's so little time. We have 24 hours, and 8 of those we need to sleep. So I think that also contributes to my fast-paced mind too, because there are all of these things that are happening in one area, and then when I run out of time in that area and I must move to another area, then there's all of these things in like the home area, and in the work area, and the creative area, and the life area, and the parenting area. Like, and there's just all these things that I want. I feel like a soul cry to do and do well, and that contributes. So, the next thing is like the fulfilling physical needs, things like sleep and doctor's visits and diagnoses and nutrition, drinking water. I've been trying to. I don't know if you're watching on YouTube. I've got my big water tears. Yes, we will take a sip moment.
Yes, very important.
Yes. Hope you did too. And but like even like bathroom breaks and things like that. Like whenever I'm whenever I'm really, really connected to the fast-paced culture, I forget to do these things. And it's like detrimental, guys. Like it's bad. Vitamins and supplements and medicines. And the older that I get, the more that I feel physical effects of this. So when I was younger, it was like a mental thing where I would just will myself to stay up for 48 hours and do all the things, right? Especially when we're in college, we talk about all-nighters and things like that, and they're kind of romanticized and things like that. But I'm noticing now my body will not let me pull an all-nighter. It cannot pull an all-nighter. In fact, it shuts down. And then there are physical ailments that come along with neglecting things like your vitamins and bathroom breaks and water and doctor's visits and things. So, and I speak from personal experience in this. And so now there are things that I can't turn back because I did not take care of my physical body. I only listen to and and let the fast-paced culture that we have around us, like, control my thoughts and my values and my priorities. So there's that. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. And it's hard to remember those things, but now that we are a little older and wiser, we can take what we understand now. We can hopefully share that with some younger folks that may listen to us. I don't know, maybe not. And then we know now, like, okay, these are the things that are important, and we know why too, because it does affect our creativity, it affects our relationships, it affects absolutely everything. So, just having a different mindset on this is huge.
Right. 1,000% agree. And I was trying to fit everything all into a routine. And so I wrote down all of the things that I needed to do in a day, and was trying to find a way that I could structure and make my days a straight line, because that was the goal. I was going to be a good adult and do this. And so when I put everything in, I did the time allotments and everything like that. And I was being fairly conservative with the time allotments too. Like, it probably will take me a little longer than doing some to do some of those things, but it didn't fit well. And so between all of the aspects that we talked about that we want to affect in our lives, putting that onto a calendar, I was going to have to get up at like 3:45 in the morning, and I was not going to be able to go to bed until like 10:30, which meant that I was not going to get the 8 hours of allotment that I needed for sleep in order to be a functioning person. So that's kind of one of the things that made me ask Joy some questions about self-care and like how she prioritizes and things like that. And it's kind of alerted me to some of the things like the culture issue that we have. And what happens, I don't know, like what happens, this might be for you guys who are listening, when we find ourselves in these positions as, I'm a 40-year-old woman, and I have responsibilities and commitments that I cannot shirk. And like, how do we fix this? I don't know.
And this is an ongoing conversation.
Exactly.
This is us. This is extremely candid. This is us thinking through things and trying to work through things individually and as a partnership, a creative partnership, just talking through these things together. And now with you guys as well as part of the conversation.
So I guess to shorten that all, it's like, so what's a girl to do?
Yeah.
So what we realized though, as Joy and I were talking, of rest and all of these things, is that there is no template that everybody can use as a go-to, and that this will likely be different for everyone, and even different for the same person in different places and times in their lives. And so, that's not super helpful, but I guess acknowledging these things is the first step to getting to a helpful place.
So. Definitely, like just saying it, speaking it, talking it through, I feel like is huge, And in our conversations, we talked about layers. This is something that, when I've had, well, an example of this that doesn't really fit with the self-care thing, but just so you can kind of see where we're going, is whenever I start school each year with the kids, okay, so I homeschool my kids. So when we start our school year, typically there's a subject or two that I hold off for a week or two to add it in, okay? So then we add those in layers. We get our school year started back in layers. And for me personally, this is helpful when I'm adding new things to my schedule or, whatever the case may be, is just to think of it in terms of layers. Are so many things that we do in our lives, it's like one decision on top of another. The problem comes in when there's some interceptor. Like we've got all these things like stacked up, right? And then there's some interceptor. It could be an illness. It could be going out of town. It could be some big event. It could be some huge deadline. It could be whatever. And it causes all those things to topple, right? And then the thing is, when we come back to it, we still have to do these things. We have to put them back up in our tower. And sometimes picking them up one thing at a time is helpful. Sometimes it's not possible, right? So we have kind of this back and forth of, can we do it this way? Is this really helpful? What do we do when that interceptor comes? You know, the little crazed toddler who knocks the tower over. You know, what do we do? And we don't necessarily have a solution for this. This is just, like we said, this is us talking through, like, how does this look in our lives? What happens to throw us off course? What, you know, what are the things? What are the things? And how can we approach them? What can we do about them?
Right, right. And here comes a little more candid.
Yeah.
This understanding, it can feel overwhelming and just plain hard. And it can stop us exactly where we are. We can freeze. We can petrify. You know.
Yeah.
And just that whole knowledge that things can be changed and changed quickly as we are trying to add one good thing on top of another good thing on top of another good thing, and then just realizing that interceptor can come and remove all that, and you have to build it all over again. I do have a little bit of encouragement for you in that area, in that what I have found in other areas of my life, especially in like creativity and, you know, like getting back to a good place in writing and that sort of thing, that the practice of just continuing to add one good thing on top of another good thing, on top of another good thing, gets blasted. Start over. Add one good thing on top of another good thing on top of another good thing. What I can tell you is that the more that you have to start over, the faster it gets. It's like a muscle. So, it still takes time, and it will still be hard, and it will still be overwhelming, but maybe that's a little encouragement to you as well, as the more that we have to fix it, the faster we get at it sometimes. So, and while we readily admit that we have no answers here, and these are answers that we are individually wrestling with and working through, we do hold fast, Joy and I, to some truths that we as Christians believe firmly. And we have been given promises that we can spiritually rest in as we struggle with these issues of practice, you know, like practical rest and self-care. Christ has promised us rest in Him. And He's also promised that this life, this race of a life, that it isn't all there is. And that's a big, big deal, especially when we don't have the answers and we're feeling this insecurity and overwhelm.
Yeah, definitely. That just gives us a boost as we work toward more practical answers. Yeah. So we also think that we can redefine success in these areas. And one of the biggest things that, as we discussed, one of the biggest takeaways that we want to share with you guys is that when we do let something slip, when, you know, the things topple and we don't get them back up the way they're supposed to be, we need to accept grace in that and move on.
Why is that so hard?
I know, right? And honestly, and I think we're going to mention this in a minute, but like learning to accept grace, that really is, in our estimation, an example of self-care. Like grace for ourselves. That is an aspect of self-care that we need to embrace.
Per our definition.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what we have really taken away personally from our discussions about redefining self-care is that there are things that we can do in all aspects of our lives, in our workplace self-care, in our family self-care, our physical self-care, relationship self-care, creative self-care. Like there's things that we can do in all of those places. Also, we know that rest is right because God declared it so. So Joy, give us some examples of self-care under our redefinition.
Okay, and so like we mentioned earlier, and like May mentioned earlier, you know, for you, a bubble bath really might be self-care, okay? For us, that wasn't the thing, so we wanted to come up with some things that are self-care for us. You know, one of those things is actually saying no. Okay. And this could be, I know it's so hard, but this could be at work, this could be at church, in your social settings, to the PTA, whatever the thing is, like saying no to certain things, that can be a form of self-care, as can saying yes to certain things. And in these cases, this might be more of that relationship self-care. So saying yes to quality time with family, even time spent snuggling with a pet, whatever those things are. So the saying no, saying yes, those can both be examples.
Yeah. And if you're working in a position where saying no is really not an option, because sometimes there are some situations like that, then you might have to say yes. But you also might have to readjust the things in the responsibility packet to say, I said yes to this because I had to, but that means that I have to discontinue this over here. Or I have to readjust this over here, or this over here needs to be delegated to somebody else because this has been a requirement placed upon me. And I think that part of that self-care too is knowing when to speak up about those kind of things.
Right.
And when you have to say yes. Also, think creatively on how that can be fit into the time limit that you have and that you have promised that corporation or wherever you're working, and whenever you took the job. So,
and I was just going to say that's where, those relationships are very helpful. The people that you have in your life who are your confidants, sometimes this is your spouse, best friend, a coworker you really genuinely trust, those kinds of things. Those are the people that you can go to as sounding boards to talk through these things, to figure out, okay, what can I actually say no to? What are my options here? How can I redefine this? Or is there an option to do that? So definitely cling to those and use those people in this way to help you figure these things out.
Right. But I don't think it's irresponsible, or I don't think that you should feel pigeonholed into one particular thing, that there is some creative thinking that can be done, and there is some compromise that can be done. And sometimes if you just ask, that's all that needs to be done. And then, of course, weigh your situation carefully, and know the personality of the corporation and your supervisors and that sort of thing too. But that they're, in a good, healthy situation, there's going to be compromise and wiggle room available.
Yeah, definitely. And then, some other examples. So often we think about these big, huge things like weekend getaways and, big spa things or whatever. But what about a 5-minute meditation moment? Just 5 minutes. You can even do this at your desk at work. 5 minutes to just sit there, close your eyes, and just rest for a few moments, or, put on some soothing music or something like that. We all are allowed a 5-minute break here and there. You're supposed to be. If not, then you got a problem at your job. That needs to be addressed on a a whole other level. It could also be something like buying a foot massager and using it each evening. So when you get home, if you're on your feet all day, man, that would be super helpful. Just sit there for a few minutes and have that do its magic, right? Another thing, and this is something for me, this past week, I actually bought some new tools that will help alleviate some of my pain when I work. So I have a new chair. It's not the one in the picture if you're watching on YouTube. I haven't set it up yet, but I've got a new desk chair, and I've gotten like some keyboard pads and stuff to kind of help with my wrists and things like that. So, maybe you just need to save up and get some of these tools to help. Even writing things on the calendar, and I chuckle about this because we had a conversation not long ago with some other people, how with your spouse, you actually have to write it on the calendar. Like, we're going to have a date night or we're going to do this or we're going to whatever. So actually writing time on the calendar for date nights or binge nights or just alone time with that significant other or writing time or whatever. And on the note of writing time, maybe you can actually wake up an hour early to get 2 full hours of writing done, for example, or sticking to a hard end time for work, so that you can grab 30 minutes to fill your creative well, or whatever the case may be. So these are all And this is not exhaustive by any means, but these are just a few examples of things that maybe we haven't thought of as self-care before. So just ways to get you to be thinking in a different way.
Right. And if we even go a little bit further, just that whole idea of thinking in a different way can be self-care too, allowing yourself to grasp hold of a different definition, of a redefinition, and finding these little things that are going to make you feel just a smidge refreshed a little bit at a time. Maybe you don't have a whole bunch of time, but there's just these little nuggets that you can do, even if it's 30 seconds, to get you, just to get you into a better mental place. And that's what this is all about. Like we're trying to get us to a place where we feel peace and we feel wholeness, so that we can be the best that we can be in this little life that we have.
Yeah, so, absolutely. I love the way you said that.
And we may not have like specific answers for ourselves or for you on how all of this should come together on a daily basis, but we are actively pursuing a redefinition on what self-care is and looks like for us individually. And we really challenge you to do the same and share it with us. We'll share our things with you, and hopefully together we can build a really, really great thing.
Definitely. And one more note before we go to this episode's challenge. In this redefining of self-care, we may realize a number of ways in which we're caring for ourselves already. And if we're not, like we said earlier, grace is also a form of self-care. So giving ourselves grace when we realize we may have been too hard on ourselves or have been going about particular things out of duty or that sense of must rather than love or care. So yeah, just remember that grace is a form of self-care.
Yes, absolutely. So, are we ready for a QWERTY challenge?
Yes, we are. Give it to us.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So, we would like you to identify what you think self-care actions can be using the QWERTY definition. And we'd like you to organize them in the amount of time that they can take to complete. So, do you have 30 seconds or a free 5 minutes? Look at the 5-minute column and pick an action that sparks interest, and you're like, oh, that's going to make me feel so good. And then you will have treated yourself in 2 different ways. First of all, the preparation, and second of all, the implementation. So that's one option for your QWERTY challenge. Here's option 2. Make a list of everything that you would like to do in a week and identify the items that are for every day. What items are on specific days, and then if some are things that can be done once a month or once a week, so on and so forth. Then create a possible schedule for the week. This schedule should allow for like the right amount of time for sleep and a little bit of rest too. So like Joy was talking about, scheduling those things in, putting it on the calendar. If it doesn't, what are the pain points of that schedule? Like, how can you use this information in this episode to help you take care of yourself and, in turn, take care of your loved ones?
Yeah. Oh, those are great. I hope you guys do this. Let us know what you do. We want to hear about it.
Yes.
And we hope you have a fantastic week.
And go make something.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope this episode encouraged you. Like all creatives, we thrive on consumer recommendations. So, please consider leaving us a review and sharing our podcast with your creative friends.
If you'd like to continue this conversation, visit us on our website at QWERTYWritingLife.com or on Instagram at QWERTY Writing Life.